What is happening, everybody? It is I, your coach, Melanie Black, and today on the Nerd Gym live stream, I am going to give you my number one stretch for back pain. Now, before we get into a quick disclaimer, I am not a medical doctor. If you've got an injury or a potential injury, please do see your doctor. But when it comes to addressing back pain from the standpoint of I've been sitting too much, I'm weak, I'm getting this pain because of like lifestyle stuff and needing to move my body, that's where I come in and I can definitely help you out with that. I totally sympathize with those of you who are spending way too much time in your chair at your desk. Most of my day is spent this way, so I fully appreciate and sympathize with this problem. That said, you know that you need to strengthen your back, you know that you need to do more activity, and that's part of the reason why the back pain creeps in. But what happens, okay, you're like, fine, Melanie, I know I need to work out, I need to strengthen my back muscles, but my back hurts right now, so like, what do I do? What do I do for a stretch to stretch it out and make it feel better? Okay, we're gonna get into that, but let's talk about the anatomy so that we know what the heck we are actually stretching here, right? Because here's the thing, the back has all kinds of crazy layers of gorgeous slabs of muscles on it. So we've got some beautiful anatomy in the body, but it is dang complicated. So on your surface level, we've got these nice big upper trapezius in the upper back, the lats, but you'll notice that as we get into the lower back, that area that you are probably feeling the pain in, there we get a lot of tendony and connective tissue stuff. So what the heck's going on in there? Why does it even hurt? So let's talk about that a little bit, especially since it gives me the opportunity to talk about multifidus and psoas. Multifidus and psoas are some really deep core muscles. So in these deep core muscles, what you're going to find is you're going to find that they are stabilizers of the low back. The multifidus muscle is an important stabilizer of the lumbar spine. That's your lower back. It functions together with the transverse abdominis and pelvic floor muscles for spinal stability. Multifidus muscle weakens and atrophies, and when that happens, it is associated with low back pain. So yes, of course, doing exercises that stabilize your core will strengthen these little tiny muscles all up in the vertebrae, all up in there. Any kind of weightlifting, any kind of planks, any kinds of stabilizing where you're stabilizing and tensing your core, that will all benefit these little tiny muscles. Now, sometimes these muscles will cramp up if there's an injury, and they'll clamp down and cramp up to prevent you from injuring yourself further. So this is where we'll get into why we stretch the way we do for the lower back in a moment here. But let's also talk a little bit about the psoas, because I think people underestimate the role of the psoas potentially in low back pain, especially if you're the kind of person who sits for long periods of time and notices back pain specifically when you stand up. Your psoas may be at play here. The psoas muscle is located in the lower lumbar region of the spine and extends through the pelvis to the femur. This muscle works by flexing the hip joint and lifting the upper leg towards the body. A common example of the movement created from this muscle is walking. So just walking, really wonderful for the psoas, really wonderful for you if you are experiencing chronic low back pain, especially from sitting for long periods of time, and you notice that when you stand up from sitting, you're like, my back. If this is you, you may have some psoas stuff to suss out here. Now, getting back to the multifidus, what we find is that sometimes you will get an actual injury in your back. If this happens, obviously, again, your doctor is the person to go to, not a personal trainer on the internet. But what will sometimes happen is these little tiny muscles up in the spine here tend to be a little bit hyper protective of us. So if we have experienced a back injury in the past, even if we are no longer suffering from that injury, sometimes these tiny little muscles in the low back will cramp up in an attempt to kind of stabilize and prevent further movement. And that muscle cramping of those tiny little muscles muscles can be back pain. So back pain can be caused by not only an actual injury, but also your body's reaction to potential of injury. And of course, your body knows that potential of injury is greater if your muscles are weak. So yeah, there's a lot of factors at play here. But keep in mind that when we're talking about low back stretches, we're generally not talking about the big muscles, because those big slab-like muscles don't really extend so much to the lower back, except for with the attachments there. What we're really talking about is some of these deep muscles, the little erector spinae, the multifidus, the psoas, all these deep muscles. So that said, let's talk about the exercises. Let's talk about what we actually do in order to get these muscles to loosen up and release. Okay, so first one that I would highly recommend everyone do is the pelvic tilt. This is my number one exercise. Pelvic tilt, we're going to crunch the abs in, tuck the pelvis underneath, crunch those abs together, and then we're going to stick the booty out and back, stick that tailbone up towards the ceiling. So we're tucking the tailbone underneath, sticking the tailbone up towards the ceiling, and we're rolling the hips back and forth, tucking that tailbone under and sticking the hip out and back. Think happy dog and then sad dog. Lifting the tailbone and then tucking the tailbone. All right, so we want actual movement with this. This will get the low back to loosen up. This will get those little tiny muscles in there to realize that they're not under threat and to gently start moving them around. We don't want to just put a static stretch on those muscles. We want to get them moving and get the core activated in such a way that the deeper muscles can relax a little bit. So this is my absolute number one recommendation for people with low back pain and for preventing low back pain just from general lifestyle stuff. If it's not like an actual back injury, but maybe you're sitting too much, or maybe you've got weak muscles and you need to start gradually working into doing more core work, this is my top recommendation. Now, this might look easy, but you would be amazed at how many people have a really tough time with this. So if this is you, if you're having a hard time trying to feel where those muscles are, and instead of doing this little pelvic roll or this pelvic tuck, you find yourself doing this. If you're doing this, this is not the thing that we want. This is not going to help. So if you find it difficult to do this movement right here, the second recommendation is where this comes into play. It can actually be easier to find that movement by doing the cat-cow stretch. So many of you may be familiar with the cat-cow stretch from yoga. We sink the belly down, arch up, and then arch the back up like a Halloween cat. Sink the belly down like an old cow. Back and forth here. So just by having the knees and hands on the floor and stabilized, it forces all of the movement into the core and can make it easier if we don't have real good body awareness, real good kinesthetic awareness, and we find that pelvic tilt a little bit difficult to wrap our heads around as we're trying to get that spinal movement going. Cat-cow is a wonderful way to get that same or a similar kind of movement as the pelvic tilt. So cat-cow would be my second recommendation. Now, my third recommendation on here comes in mostly specifically for those of you who might feel that back pain standing up from the desk. If you're standing up from the desk and you're like, that might be your psoas muscle. Or if you're a cyclist, maybe you spend a lot of time with your hips in flexion, right? Anytime we spend a lot of time with our hips in flexion, in this flexed position, whether that's sitting or cycling, what we're going to end up with is potentially a shortened psoas. And remember that psoas attaches the inside of the lower back through to the hips. So standing up from that can sometimes result in, oh, I feel that in my low back. If this is you, then what I would recommend doing is a kneeling hip stretch. So we're going to start in the kneeling position. We're going to take a big lunging step forward, sink forward just slightly, and then tuck that tailbone underneath. Now this might not look very different, but it will feel very different through the front of the hip here. So we're not just passively leaning forward, we are coming forward just a bit and then tucking the tailbone underneath like sad dog. Think sad dog, tuck that tailbone, and that will give you a nice stretch through the front of the hip. You're going to mostly feel it through this part of the front of the hip, but rest assured that what we're getting at here is, in part at least, the psoas muscle, which runs from that point in the hip through the core and into the low back. So as a maintenance stretching this regularly, if you spend lots of time sitting or cycling, I highly recommend doing that kneeling stretch. All right, so those are my top three stretches for back pain. So do these regularly. You can do them every day. There's no limit on how much you can do them. It's not like a static stretch where you're like putting yourself on the rack or whatever, and you're not going to injure those delicate little muscles in there, because you're just moving your body, especially with the very first one, that pelvic tilt. You're moving those muscles gently back and forth, getting them to function the way they were designed to, getting them to function together and loosen up and do the dang thing. So if you found this helpful or interesting, give me the thumbs up. If you have questions for me, go ahead and drop them in the comments below, and I will get to them in a future episode. We've got some exciting episodes coming up. If you are interested in a body transformation, go ahead, join the Nerd Gym. I'll be dropping more episodes coming shortly. I know a lot of people have been interested in my weight gain experiment. I've deliberately gained 50 pounds this year that I'm going to lose and document on a weekly series of live YouTube videos here. So if that is something that interests you, go ahead and check that out. Go to thenerdgym.com if you want to join me for a body transformation. We have memberships for any budget, any level. We do online classes, we do online nutrition, and it's super fun. So hey, join us, and I will look forward to talking to you tomorrow. What are we talking about tomorrow? I don't remember. Tune in and find out. We're going to be here every day this week, so I'll see you on the next one. All right, bye-bye. Bye-bye.